The research vessel Endeavour floated quietly in the darkness of space, its crew of 3 running their usual scans of the mysterious nebula that stretched out before them like a painted canvas of purple and blue gases. Dr. Sarah Chen sat at her workstation, studying the unusual radiation patterns, while Marcus Webb tinkered with a malfunctioning sensor array in the corner. Captain James Rodriguez sipped his coffee and watched the view screen with the calm expression of a man who had seen everything space could throw at him. None of them noticed the massive warship uncloaking behind them until it was too late. The ship that appeared was like something from a nightmare. It was black as the void itself, covered in sharp angles and protruding spikes that seemed designed purely to intimidate. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The vessel was easily 50 times larger than the Endeavour, and it moved with the deliberate slowness of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Commander Zixthal stood on the bridge of his warship, his 9-foot frame towering over his crew. His obsidian exoskeleton gleamed under the red lighting of the command center, and his 4 eyes focused on the small human ship with satisfaction. This would be easy. It was always easy. The Krathix Dominion had perfected the art of psychological warfare over centuries, and they had conquered 47 different species without firing more than a handful of shots. Fear was their weapon, and they wielded it like master craftsmen. The humans would surrender within minutes. They always did. Zixthal activated the communication channel and transmitted the standard intimidation package. The screens on the human ship would now be showing carefully designed images meant to trigger the deepest, primal fears in any intelligent species. Darkness, predators, death. The sounds that accompanied the images were tuned to specific frequencies that caused panic in most carbon-based life forms. On the Endeavour, Sarah looked up from her work as the main screen flickered. Strange images began flashing across it, accompanied by a deep thrumming sound that seemed to vibrate through the hull. She tilted her head, studying the display with professional interest. "Huh," she said. "Marcus, are you seeing this?" Marcus glanced over from his repair work. "Yeah, looks like some kind of psychological warfare technique. Pretty sophisticated, actually. The frequency modulation is really clever." Captain Rodriguez set down his coffee mug and studied the screen. "Well, I suppose we should respond to whoever's doing this." He pressed the communication button. "This is Captain James Rodriguez of the Earth research vessel Endeavour. Can we help you with something?" On the Krathix warship, Zixthal's antennae twitched in confusion. The humans should be cowering by now. They should be flooding communication channels with pleas for mercy. Instead, one of them sounded almost bored. He decided to escalate. Zixthal gestured to his crew, and they initiated the boarding protocol. A docking tunnel extended from the warship to the Endeavour, and a dozen Krathix warriors marched through it. Each warrior was a terrifying sight, their exoskeletons modified with sharp protrusions, their bioluminescent organs pulsing with threatening colors. They had practiced their entrance routine countless times. It never failed to break the will of their enemies. The airlock of the Endeavour hissed open, and the Krathix warriors flooded in. They spread out in their standard intimidation formation, filling the small cargo bay with their massive forms. Their leader, a warrior named Kresh, activated his threat display. Holographic images of dying worlds and burning cities filled the air around him. Chemical scent markers flooded the room, designed to trigger fear responses in any mammalian species. The 3 humans stood in the cargo bay, looking at the display of alien warriors. Sarah's eyes went wide, but not with fear. She pulled out a small tablet and started taking notes. "Fascinating," she muttered. "The holographic technology is seamless. And those bioluminescent patterns, I wonder if they're under conscious control or automatic responses." Marcus stepped closer to one of the warriors, much to the alien's surprise. "Excuse me, but is that exoskeleton biological or mechanical? The joints look articulated, but I can't tell if they're natural or enhanced." Kresh stared at the small human who had just walked up to him without any apparent fear. This had never happened before. Ever. In over 100 boarding actions, not a single species had approached them voluntarily. Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, or whatever the appropriate term is, welcome aboard the Endeavour. I apologize for the cramped conditions. We're just a research vessel, not really set up for guests. Can I offer you some coffee? We also have tea, though I'll warn you it might not be compatible with your biology." "Zixthal, watching through his warrior's body cameras, felt something he had not experienced in many years. Uncertainty. The humans were not reacting correctly. They showed curiosity instead of terror. They offered hospitality instead of surrender. Something was very wrong. He opened a direct communication channel to the human ship. His voice, translated by the universal language matrix, boomed through the cargo bay. "I am Commander Zixthal of the Krathix Dominion. You have entered space claimed by our empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately or face destruction." Rodriguez nodded politely. My apologies, Commander. We weren't aware this space was claimed. Our star charts showed it as unexplored. We're just doing some research on the nebula. Scientific mission, nothing military or commercial. Happy to share our findings if you're interested." "You do not understand your situation, human," Zixthal replied, his voice dropping to what the Krathix considered a terrifying register. "We are the Krathix. We are the nightmare that lesser species fear. We are death itself walking among you." Sarah looked up from her tablet. "Oh, you're nocturnal predators? That would explain the low-light vision adaptations I'm seeing, and the exoskeleton suggests you evolved on a high-gravity world, probably with less atmosphere than Earth. Am I close?" Zixthal found himself answering before he could stop himself. "We come from Krathix Prime. Gravity is 1.8 times your Earth standard. We are apex predators, the most feared species in 7 star systems." "That's incredible," Sarah said with genuine enthusiasm. "We'd love to learn more about your culture. This is humanity's first contact with an intelligent alien species. This is a historic moment." Marcus raised his hand like a student in a classroom. "Quick question about your ship. What kind of power source does something that size require? We're running a fusion reactor on the Endeavor, but for something 50 times larger, I'm guessing you'd need either multiple fusion cores or maybe even antimatter." The Krathix warriors looked at each other. This was not going according to any protocol they had trained for. Kresh, the boarding party leader, tried to reassert control of the situation. He activated his sonic weapon, a device that emitted a sound specifically designed to trigger the fear centers of most species' brains. The high-pitched wail filled the cargo bay. The 3 humans winced and covered their ears. "Okay, that's really unpleasant," Rodriguez said loudly over the noise. "Could you turn that off, please? It's giving me a headache." Kresh, surprised that the humans were still standing, deactivated the weapon. Most species collapsed into fetal positions when exposed to that sound. These humans just looked annoyed. "Thank you," Rodriguez said. "Look, Commander Zixthal, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over? We're peaceful researchers from Earth. We'd be happy to leave your space if that's what you want, or we could establish friendly diplomatic relations. Your choice." On his warship, Zixthal felt his confidence beginning to crack. In his entire career, spanning 3 decades, no species had ever been this casual about his intimidation displays. The humans were treating a potential conquest like a minor diplomatic inconvenience. He needed to learn more about these strange creatures before proceeding. The fear protocol was clearly not working as intended. Perhaps these humans had some technology that protected them from psychological warfare, or perhaps they were simply too primitive to understand the danger they were in. Zixthal made a decision. "We will study your species before determining your fate. My warriors will remain aboard your vessel. You will cooperate fully with our examination." Rodriguez shrugged. "Sure, we can do that. Fair warning, though. The ship only has 3 crew quarters, so your warriors might have to sleep in the cargo bay. Also, our food is probably not going to be compatible with your biology, so you might want to bring your own supplies." As the Krathix warriors settled into their unwanted role as guests rather than conquerors, Zixthal watched from his command center with growing unease. Something about these humans was deeply wrong. They should be afraid. Every instinct he had developed as a predator told him they should be terrified. But they were not. And that, more than anything else, was beginning to frighten him. Commander Zixthal spent a sleepless night cycle analyzing the situation. The humans had been aboard his target vessel for 6 hours now, and nothing was going according to plan. His warriors reported that the humans had offered them spare blankets, shown them where the bathroom facilities were located, and given them a basic tour of the ship. It was humiliating. He decided it was time to escalate. If simple intimidation displays were not working, then he would show these humans what real terror looked like. The next morning, ship time, Zixthal transported himself aboard the Endeavor along with his elite dreadguard. These were the most terrifying warriors in the Krathix military. They stood even taller than regular Krathiks, their exoskeletons modified with razor-sharp blades and toxin dispensers. Their very presence had caused some species to die from heart failure induced by pure fear. The Dreadguard materialized in the cargo bay in a flash of light and smoke. They arranged themselves in their most threatening formation, their weapons gleaming, their bioluminescent organs pulsing with colors that signaled extreme danger in the universal language of predator species. Captain Rodriguez looked up from the tablet he had been reading. "Oh, more visitors. Good morning, Commander. Would you like some breakfast? We're having scrambled eggs and toast. Well, the human version of scrambled eggs. They're made from chicken eggs. Chickens are these birds we domesticated about 8,000 years ago." Zixthal felt his confidence waver again. He pressed forward with his prepared speech. "Humans, you have been given time to consider your position. Now you will witness the true might of the Krathik's dominion. Behold your destruction." He activated the holographic projector he had brought with him. The cargo bay filled with images of Earth, but not the Earth as it existed now. This was Earth dying, cities burning, oceans boiling, the atmosphere stripped away. It was a simulation of what Krathik's weapons could do to a planet, and it was completely realistic down to the smallest detail. Sarah watched the display with her head tilted. "Is that supposed to be Earth?" "You got the continents right, but the atmospheric composition in your simulation is off. Our atmosphere is about 78% nitrogen, not 82%. Also, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, but your simulation has it boiling at 95 degrees. Just thought you should know for future accuracy." Zixthal stared at the small human female who had just critiqued his planet destruction simulation like it was a student's homework assignment. Marcus joined in. "The orbital mechanics are pretty good, though," Marcus said. "And the energy calculations for atmospheric stripping look solid. What kind of weapon system would generate that much power? We've theorized about stellar-scale engineering, but we haven't built anything close to that yet." "Yet?" Zixthal found himself asking. "Well, yeah," Marcus said with a shrug. "We've only been in space for about 300 years. Give us another few centuries and we'll probably figure it out. Humans are pretty good at building things that blow up." Commander Zixthal felt a chill run down his spine despite his exoskeleton. The human had said it so casually as if the complete destruction of planets was just an engineering challenge to be solved eventually. He tried a different approach. He activated his sonic weapon, but this time at a different frequency. This one did not just cause discomfort. It triggered the amygdala, the fear center of the mammalian brain. It forced prey species to feel pure primal terror regardless of their rational thoughts. The sound filled the room. The three humans stopped what they were doing and stood very still for a moment. Then Sarah's face lit up with recognition. "Oh, that's an amygdala hijack. You're using sonic resonance to trigger the fear response directly. That's brilliant. We have research into this kind of technology, but we mostly abandoned it because it was considered too inhumane for warfare. We use similar frequencies for crowd control in some places, but at much lower intensities." Zixthal turned off the weapon, his confidence now completely shattered. "You have weapons that you consider too cruel to use in war?" "Well, yeah," Rodriguez said. "We have lots of those. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, certain types of landmines. We banned most of them through international treaties. Using fear as a weapon seems cruel when you could just, negotiate instead." One of the Dreadguard, a warrior named Thex, spoke up in the Krathik's language. "Commander, request permission to access the human database. I want to understand what kind of species would ban effective weapons." Zixthal granted permission, glad that at least one of his warriors was taking initiative. Thex connected his portable terminal to the Endeavor's computer system. The humans had not even bothered to encrypt their historical database. They just let him in. What Thex found in the next 30 minutes would change everything. He started with human military history, thinking he would find records of primitive warfare. What he found instead was a catalog of horrors. Humans had fought wars continuously for their entire recorded history. They had developed weapons of such devastating power that they could destroy their own planet many times over. And yet they had somehow managed not to use the worst of these weapons. Thex read about something called World War I, trench warfare. Humans had sat in muddy holes for years, slowly dying from disease, drowning in mud, being torn apart by artillery shells, and they had just kept fighting. There was no mention of surrender when conditions became intolerable. They just endured. He read about World War II. Cities flattened by conventional bombs. Then 2 cities destroyed by atomic weapons that split atoms themselves to release devastating energy. Humans had built weapons that used the fundamental forces of the universe to kill other humans. He read about smaller conflicts. Humans fighting in jungles where disease killed more soldiers than combat. Humans fighting in deserts where the heat alone should have been fatal. Humans fighting in frozen mountains where the cold turned breath to ice. And then Thex made a mistake. He accessed the human entertainment database. The first video file he opened was labeled The Thing. It was something humans called a horror movie. Entertainment designed to scare them. Thex watched as humans on a research station in one of Earth's polar regions were hunted by an alien creature that could imitate any life form perfectly. The creature was nightmare fuel, a constantly shifting mass of flesh and teeth and tentacles. Thex watched in growing horror as the humans in the movie fought back against this creature with flamethrowers and explosives. They did not simply run and hide. They hunted it. They trapped it. They destroyed it. And this was considered entertainment. He opened another file. Alien. This one was about humans encountering a species that existed only to reproduce by implanting embryos in host bodies. The creature was perfect, a killing machine with acid for blood and a titanium-hard exoskeleton. And yet, a single human female survived and killed it by blowing it out an airlock into space. Thex opened file after file. Event Horizon. The Shining. Predator. Each one was a story designed to frighten humans, and in each one the humans faced their fears and fought back. They did not surrender. They did not give up. They endured. The young warrior stood up from the terminal, his legs shaking. He approached Commander Zixthal with his eyes showing what could only be described as existential dread. "Commander," Thex said quietly, "we need to leave. Now." "Explain," Zixthal demanded. "They create monsters for fun," Thex said. "They imagine creatures worse than anything that exists in nature, and then they tell stories about defeating them. For entertainment. They teach their children to face fear rather than flee from it. They have a concept called courage that they value above survival." Zixthal felt his certainty crumbling. "Show me." Thex brought up the human database on a larger screen. He showed the commander the wars, the weapons, the horror movies, the survival statistics from various disasters. Humans who had survived for weeks without food. Humans who had walked hundreds of miles through hostile terrain to reach safety. Humans who had performed surgery on themselves when no help was available. "Look at this, Commander," Thex said, pulling up a medical file. "Human biochemistry. When they become afraid, their bodies produce a chemical called adrenaline." "Do you know what it does?" "Prepares them to flee?" Zixthal guessed. "No, sir. It makes them stronger, faster, more resistant to pain. Their fear response is not to hide or surrender. Their fear response is to fight harder. They call it the fight-or-flight response. And they have been selecting for the fight part for their entire evolutionary history." Commander Zixthal sat down heavily, his exoskeleton clicking against the metal floor. This could not be happening. The Krathiks had built their entire military doctrine on the assumption that all species feared death and would surrender rather than face it. But these humans seemed to view death as just another problem to solve, another obstacle to overcome. "There is more, Commander," Thex said quietly. "I found their evolutionary history. Humans are persistence predators. They evolved to chase prey across long distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They did not need to be fast or strong. They just needed to never give up. And they never did." Zixthal looked at the 3 humans, who were now eating their breakfast and chatting casually while surrounded by the most elite warriors in the Krathiks military. They were not even paying attention, Doctor. Sarah Chen had noticed that the Krathiks warriors seemed uncomfortable. As a xenobiologist, she prided herself on understanding alien behavior, and these particular aliens were showing all the signs of stress. Their bioluminescent organs were pulsing irregularly, their antennae kept twitching, and several of them had positioned themselves near the exits. She decided to try being helpful. After all, this was first contact. Humans should make a good impression. "Commander Zixthal," she said brightly, "I noticed your warriors seem a bit on edge. Would it help if I explained more about human culture? Maybe that would make everyone more comfortable." Zixthal wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. But his training as a military commander included intelligence gathering, and he needed to understand these humans better. He nodded slowly. Sarah pulled out her tablet and connected it to the cargo bay's display screen. Great. So I thought I'd show you some things about human psychology and culture. Since you seem interested in fear responses, I'll focus on that. We actually have a really interesting relationship with fear. She pulled up her first presentation slide. It showed an image of something called a haunted house. Zixthal studied the image. It appeared to be a human dwelling decorated with skeletons, artificial spiderwebs, and various creatures that humans had designed to look frightening. This is a haunted house, Sarah explained cheerfully. We build these for entertainment. Humans pay money to walk through them and get scared. It's fun, Thex whispered in disbelief. Oh yes, Sarah continued. We have an entire holiday called Halloween where we dress up as monsters and scary things. Children go door to door collecting candy while wearing costumes of ghosts, vampires, zombies, and other creatures we invented to frighten ourselves. She clicked to the next slide. This one showed humans riding a roller coaster. Their faces twisted in expressions that looked like terror, but they were also smiling. These are roller coasters. They're machines designed to simulate danger. They drop you from great heights, spin you upside down, and move at high speeds. They're completely safe, but they trigger our fear responses. And we love them. Some humans travel across the planet just to ride the most extreme roller coasters. Kresh, the warrior who had first boarded the Endeavor, spoke up. Why would you seek out fear if you do not have to? Sarah thought about this for a moment. I guess it's because fear makes us feel alive. Also, we like testing ourselves. Overcoming fear feels good. It makes us confident. There's actually a brain chemical called dopamine that gets released when we do scary things safely. It's pleasurable. She clicked through several more slides showing humans engaging in what she called extreme sports. Skydiving. Rock climbing without ropes. Something called parkour where humans jumped between buildings. Cave diving in underwater tunnels. Base jumping off cliffs. We do all of this voluntarily, Sarah said. For fun and challenge. Nobody forces us. We just like pushing our limits. Commander Zixthal felt something cold settling in his stomach. These humans deliberately sought out situations that triggered their fear responses. They had turned fear into a recreational activity. What kind of species did that? Sarah moved on to her next section. Now let's talk about human children's entertainment. This is really interesting from a psychological perspective. She showed images of children's books. These are fairy tales we tell to young humans. In this one, a child gets lost in the forest and almost gets eaten by a witch. In this one, a girl is hunted by an evil queen who wants to cut out her heart. In this one, children are lured into a house made of candy by a witch who plans to eat them. You tell these stories to your children? Zixthal asked in horror. Well, yes, Sarah said. Child psychologists believe it helps them learn to cope with fear in a safe environment. We start teaching humans to face scary things when they're very young. It's part of healthy development. Marcus wandered over, interested in the conversation. Oh, are you talking about scary movies? I love horror films. Did you show them The Thing yet? Not yet, Sarah said. But that's a good example. She pulled up the movie trailer. The Krathix warriors who had not yet seen. It watched in growing distress as the shape-shifting monster consumed and imitated humans in increasingly gruesome ways. This is considered a classic, Marcus said enthusiastically. The practical effects were amazing for the time period. The thing about horror movies is they let us experience danger without actual risk. Plus, the problem-solving aspect is interesting. How would you survive in that situation? What clues would tell you who's infected? It's like a puzzle wrapped in terror. A puzzle wrapped in terror. Zixthal repeated slowly. The human had just described nightmare fuel as an intellectual exercise. Captain Rodriguez joined them, carrying a fresh cup of coffee. Are we doing cultural exchange? Excellent, Commander. I'd be happy to share some of my experiences if you're interested. I served in the Mars Rebellion before becoming a research captain. Mars Rebellion? Zixthal asked, not sure he wanted to know but unable to stop himself from asking. Oh yeah, Rodriguez said. Back in 2289, the Mars colonies wanted independence from Earth. Turned into a 3-year conflict. Nasty business. Fighting in low gravity. Dealing with life support failures, combat in vacuum. Lost a lot of good people. He said it so casually, as if describing a sporting event rather than what sounded like a horrific war. You fought in a vacuum? Kresh asked. Without atmosphere? Had to sometimes, Rodriguez confirmed. When your habitat gets breached, you don't have much choice. We trained for it. You've got about 15 seconds of useful consciousness in hard vacuum before you pass out. Maybe 90 seconds before permanent brain damage. But that's enough time to get to an airlock or patch a suit breach if you're quick and don't panic. 15 seconds of consciousness without air, Thex whispered. And you just trained to work within that limit? Sure, Rodriguez said. Humans are pretty adaptable. We've got this saying, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. Means that we've had people survive things that should have killed them. Extreme cold sometimes puts the body in a state where it needs less oxygen. We've had drowning victims revived after over an hour underwater in freezing water. Human biology is weird. He took a sip of his coffee. The thing about humans is we're really hard to kill and we don't give up easily. During the Mars Rebellion, there was this one siege where we were cut off from supplies for 43 days. We survived on recycled water and emergency rations meant for 2 weeks. Lost 30% body weight. Everyone was in bad shape. But we didn't surrender. Why not? Zixthal asked. If you were starving, why continue fighting? Rodriguez looked surprised by the question. Because we still had a chance. As long as you're alive, you've got a chance. Plus there's pride. We don't like giving up. It goes against our nature. We're persistence predators. We evolved to keep going long after our prey collapsed from exhaustion. Giving up just isn't in our psychological makeup. Sarah jumped back in, excited. Oh, that's a great point. Let me show you human persistence hunting. She pulled up a video of human hunters in Africa tracking an antelope across the savannah under the hot sun. The antelope was faster, but the humans just kept walking. Hour after hour. The antelope would run, rest, run again. The humans just walked. Eventually, after something like 8 hours, the antelope collapsed from heat exhaustion, and the humans walked up to it. That's how we hunted for most of our evolution, Sarah explained. We're not the fastest, not the strongest, not the best climbers, but we can keep going longer than almost anything else. We sweat to cool down, which lets us operate in heat that would kill most predators. We can carry water and food. We can plan and communicate, and we just don't stop. She pulled up another video. This is the human activity called a marathon. Humans run for over 42 kilometers without stopping. For fun. Some humans do ultramarathons that are even longer. The record for continuous running is something like 350 kilometers over 3 days. Marcus nodded. Yeah, endurance is kind of humanity's superpower. We're not impressive in short bursts, but over time, we outlast everything. There's this concept called spite that plays into it too. Sometimes humans keep going just to prove they can, even when it's not logical. Spite? Zixthal asked. Sure, Marcus said. Like, I know this is painful and difficult, but I'm going to do it anyway because you said I couldn't. Humans can be really stubborn. We'll endure tremendous hardship just to prove a point. It's not always smart, but it's definitely human. Rodriguez laughed. That's true. I remember one guy in basic training. The instructor said he'd never make it through the obstacle course. That guy ran the course 5 times in a row just to prove the instructor wrong. Threw up twice, pulled a muscle, finished anyway. Pure spite. The 3 humans laughed together at the memory, as if self-destructive stubbornness was amusing rather than concerning. Zixthal looked at his warriors. They all had the same expression of dawning horror. They had been trying to scare creatures that actively sought out fear, that told horror stories to their children. Commander Zixthal retreated to a quiet corner of the Endeavor's cargo bay to consult with his science officer, Vexith, over a secure communication channel. He needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with before he made his next move. Vexith, I'm sending you all the data we have collected on humans so far. I need a complete biological and psychological analysis, priority maximum. On the Krathix warship, Vexith received the data files and began analyzing them. What she found in the next hour would fundamentally change how the Krathix viewed these strange aliens. She started with human biology. The basics seemed normal enough. Carbon-based life, oxygen breathers, water as a solvent. But as she dug deeper, the oddities began to appear. Humans had something called an adrenal gland that produced several powerful hormones. When humans experience fear or stress, these glands released a chemical called adrenaline into their bloodstream. Vexith studied the effects of this chemical with growing disbelief. Adrenaline increased heart rate, delivering more oxygen to muscles. It dilated airways, improving breathing. It caused the liver to release glucose for quick energy. It reduced pain perception. It enhanced memory formation and focus. Most incredibly, it increased physical strength by allowing muscles to contract more forcefully. Humans got stronger when they were afraid. Their fear response literally enhanced their combat capabilities. Vexith cross-referenced this with the Krathix fear response. When a Krathix became frightened, their bodies prepared for flight. Blood moved away from their extremities to protect their core. Their strength decreased to conserve energy for running. Their cognitive functions simplified to basic escape behaviors. Humans and Krathix had exactly opposite reactions to fear. The Krathix evolved to run from danger. Humans evolved to fight it, but there was more. Vexith found references to something called hysterical strength or superhuman strength. Under extreme stress, humans could perform feats far beyond their normal capabilities. There were documented cases of human females lifting vehicles off trapped children, of injured humans carrying multiple people to safety, of humans bending metal bars with their bare hands when trapped. The mechanism was simple. Normally, human brains limited muscle contraction to prevent injury, but under extreme circumstances, these limiters could be overridden. Humans could tear their own muscles, break their own bones, and damage their own joints if they pushed hard enough. And in life-threatening situations, they sometimes did exactly that. Vexith moved on to human evolution. She had to read the files 3 times because they seemed impossible. Humans were pursuit predators. They had evolved to chase prey across long distances in the hot African sun. Their bodies were optimized for endurance rather than speed or strength. They had nearly hairless skin covered in sweat glands that allowed them to cool down through evaporation. They could carry water and food. They had springy tendons in their legs that returned energy with each step. But the most remarkable adaptation was mental. Humans could suppress their body's distress signals. When a prey animal became exhausted, it stopped running because its body forced it to stop. When a human became exhausted, they could choose to keep going anyway. Their brains could override their body's survival instincts through sheer willpower. There were stories in the human database of humans running until their hearts failed, walking until their legs broke, continuing to fight with fatal wounds. It was not that humans did not feel pain or exhaustion. They felt it but chose to ignore it. Vexith sent a priority message to Commander Zixthal. Commander, humans are persistence predators with voluntary control over their pain response and the ability to override survival instincts through willpower. Their fear response enhances combat capability, rather than preparing them for flight. They are, biologically speaking, the worst possible species to attempt intimidation on. While this analysis was happening, an incident occurred on the Endeavour that would make everything worse. Dr. Sarah Chen had been conducting her research in the ship's small biology lab. She was studying samples collected from the nebula, looking for signs of extremophile organisms. One of her sample containers had been left near a heating element and had cracked, allowing several specimens to escape into the lab. Among these specimens was something Sarah had collected from a piece of debris earlier in the mission. It was an Earth organism that had somehow survived in space, probably hitching a ride on some earlier human vessel. It was small, brown, and had 8 legs. It was a common house spider. The spider, disturbed by its sudden change in environment, scuttled out of the biology lab and into the main corridor. It happened to cross the path of Kresh, the Krathix warrior who had led the initial boarding party. Kresh saw the 8-legged creature moving rapidly across the floor toward him. His evolution on Krathix Prime, where fast-moving small creatures were often venomous, triggered an immediate panic response. He jumped backward, colliding with 2 other warriors, and let out a high-pitched alarm call that brought every Krathix on the ship to full alert. Contact. Hostile organism. Pattern suggests ambush predator, Kresh shouted in his native language. 3 more Krathix warriors spotted the spider and scrambled away from it. The small creature, confused by all the noise and movement, did what spiders do when threatened. It moved quickly, trying to find a dark place to hide. To the Krathix, it looked like an attack run. Alarms blared throughout the Endeavour as the Krathix warriors activated their threat response protocols. Weapons were drawn. Defensive positions were taken. The spider scuttled under a storage container, seeking shelter from all the chaos. Sarah heard the commotion and ran out of her lab. What's wrong? What happened? Hostile organism, Kresh said, pointing at the storage container. Small, fast-moving, 8-legged. Exhibiting predatory behavior patterns. Extremely dangerous, Sarah blinked. She looked where he was pointing. She got down on her hands and knees and peered under the container. Then she started laughing. "Oh my God, you guys are scared of a spider? It's harmless. Well, this species is harmless. Some spiders are venomous, but this is just a common house spider. They eat flies and mosquitoes. They're actually helpful." She reached under the container without hesitation and cupped the spider in her hands. The Krathix warriors all took several steps back. Sarah stood up, holding the tiny creature carefully. "See? Completely harmless. Poor thing is probably terrified with all this noise. Let me just put it back in the lab where it belongs." She walked past a group of elite Krathix warriors carrying an 8-legged predator in her bare hands, completely unconcerned. The warriors pressed themselves against the walls to give her as much space as possible. Marcus poked his head out of the engine room. "What's all the noise about?" "The guys found a spider," Sarah called back. "False alarm. Okay. Let me know if it's a dangerous species. Otherwise, just put it outside or something." She disappeared into her lab and the door closed behind her. The Krathix warriors looked at each other in shared humiliation and horror. "She picked it up," Thek said quietly. "She just reached under there and picked up an unknown predator with her bare hands." "She called it harmless," Kresh added. "But it clearly has the morphology of a venomous species. 8 legs suggest redundancy for hunting. Fast movement indicates pursuit predator behavior, and she just grabbed it." Commander Zixthal, who had witnessed the entire incident through his warriors' body cameras, sat down heavily on his command throne. He pulled up the human database entry on spiders. Spiders were indeed predators. They were venomous. They were highly successful as a species, with over 40,000 different varieties on Earth. Some species could kill humans with their venom, and humans just lived alongside them. They were so common in human dwellings that humans had a phrase for it: house spider. Humans shared their living spaces with venomous predators and considered it normal. He kept reading. Spiders were not even close to the most dangerous creatures on Earth. There were snakes that could kill with a single bite. There were insects that carried deadly diseases. There were fish with venom so painful that humans begged for death. There were mammals large enough to easily kill humans. There were reptiles that had remained virtually unchanged since the time of dinosaurs because they were already perfect predators, and humans had not just survived on this death world. They had thrived. They had conquered it. They had become the dominant species on a planet that seemed designed to kill them. Vexith's voice came through his communicator. "Commander, I have completed my analysis. I strongly recommend we abandon this operation immediately." "Explain," Zixthal said, though he suspected he already knew what she would say. "Humans have a concept they call spite," Vexith said. "It means they will sometimes endure suffering specifically to prove they cannot be broken. They have another concept called stubbornness, where they refuse to change course even when it becomes disadvantageous to continue. They value these traits. They teach them to their children." She paused. "Commander, if we continue trying to intimidate them, they might choose to fight us just to prove they cannot be scared. And their biology suggests they would be extremely difficult to defeat in combat. Their pain tolerance is exceptional. Their endurance is unmatched by any species we have encountered. Their fear response makes them more dangerous rather than less. I have our commander Zixthal called an emergency meeting with his senior officers in a secure room aboard his warship. The humans had graciously allowed them to use one of the Endeavor's docking shuttles for privacy, which somehow made the situation even more humiliating. They were huddling in a borrowed space because they were afraid to discuss their situation in front of their supposed captives. The 5 officers gathered in the cramped shuttle. Kresh, Thex, Vexith, and 2 ship commanders named Zalthar and Pixin. All of them looked shaken in ways that combat had never managed to achieve. "We need to vote on our next course of action," Zixthal said without preamble. Option 1. We continue the fear protocol and attempt to break human resistance through escalating intimidation. Option 2. We retreat and report this species as unsuitable for conquest. Option 3. We attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution. "If I may speak," Vexith said, "I have completed a full analysis of human capability, and I believe option 1 would be catastrophic. Every escalation we have attempted has only made the humans more interested in us, not more afraid. They are treating this as a learning experience." Zalthar, who commanded one of the escort frigates, nodded agreement. "My crew has been monitoring human communications. They are not sending distress signals. They have not attempted to escape. Captain Rodriguez filed his daily log report this morning, and he described our presence as an interesting first contact scenario, and mostly positive so far. He is not treating us as a threat. That is the problem, Zixthal said. We are not a threat to them. Not psychologically. Everything we have learned suggests that threatening humans only engages their stubbornness and combative instincts. Thex spoke up, his voice still shaken from the spider incident. Commander, I have been reviewing human military doctrine. They have a saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy. They expect things to go wrong. They train for chaos and unpredictability. Our intimidation tactics are designed to create stress and fear, but humans consider stress and fear to be normal parts of existence. Show them, Vexith said. Thex pulled up a holographic display. This is human military training. They deliberately create stressful, frightening situations to prepare their soldiers. They practice being cold, wet, tired, hungry, and under simulated fire simultaneously. They call it stress inoculation training. They are literally teaching themselves to operate normally while experiencing all the conditions we use to break enemy morale. The display showed human soldiers crawling through mud under barbed wire while explosions went off around them. Another clip showed humans being subjected to tear gas to train them to function through pain and panic. Another showed underwater escape training where humans had to hold their breath while solving problems in a flooded compartment. They train for the worst-case scenarios, Thex continued. And then when those scenarios happen in reality, they are psychologically prepared. We have been trying to create worst-case scenarios to frighten them, but they have already imagined worse and trained for it. Pixin, the other ship commander, had been quietly reviewing data on his personal tablet. Commander, I have found something else troubling. Human reaction to threat scales with the level of threat. The greater the danger, the harder they fight. There are multiple documented cases of humans performing impossible feats when sufficiently threatened. He pulled up several historical records. This human female, a mother, lifted a vehicle weighing over 2,000 kilograms to free her trapped child. This human male continued fighting after being shot multiple times, taking down 3 armed opponents before collapsing. This human soldier held a defensive position alone against 50 enemies for over 6 hours while wounded. Every time we escalate, we risk triggering this response. Zixthal felt his resolve crumbling. So you are all recommending retreat? No, sir, Vexith said carefully. I am recommending we reclassify this mission. We encountered humans believing they were a typical spacefaring species. We now know they are apex predators from a death world with psychological profiles completely incompatible with fear protocol tactics. This is not a failure. This is a discovery. A discovery that we are cowards who flee from a ship with 3 crew members, Kresh said bitterly. No, Vexith countered. A discovery that some species cannot be conquered through intimidation and should be approached differently. The Krathik's dominion has expanded through careful selection of targets. We choose species that are vulnerable to psychological warfare. We have never claimed to be capable of defeating every possible enemy. That would be arrogant and foolish, Zixthal considered this. It was a face-saving way to frame the situation. The Krathiks had not failed. They had simply encountered a species outside their tactical parameters. What do you propose? He asked Vexith. We offer a formal alliance, she said. We tell the humans that we were testing their suitability as allies by evaluating their fear response under stress. We explain that the Krathiks value courage and resilience. We say they have passed our test and we wish to establish diplomatic relations. It was clever. It reframed the entire situation from attempted conquest to an evaluation process. The humans might even believe it, given their apparent lack of understanding about how terrifying they were. And if they refuse? Zelthar asked. Then we retreat and mark their space as protected, Vexith said. We spread the word to other species that humans are dangerous and should not be provoked. We treat them as we would treat any other apex predator, with caution and respect. Zixthal looked around at his officers. They all looked relieved at this proposal. Even Kresh, who had been the most aggressive about maintaining Krathik's dominance, was nodding agreement. Very well, Zixthal said. We will attempt diplomatic contact under the alliance framework. Kresh, you will accompany me. We will formally approach Captain Rodriguez with our proposal. They returned to the Endeavor to find the 3 humans in the common area, eating lunch. The smell of cooked food filled the air, and for a moment Zixthal was distracted by how casual the scene was. These humans were eating a meal while surrounded by alien warriors who had boarded their ship by force. They had not even bothered to lock the door to their living quarters. Captain Rodriguez looked up from his sandwich. "Commander." "Good timing. We were just about to call you. We wanted to discuss the situation." "As do we, Captain," Zixthal said, trying to project confidence he did not feel. "The Krathix Dominion wishes to make a formal proposal." "Great," Rodriguez said. "But first, can I ask you something? You've been pretty intense since you arrived, and we're trying to figure out why. Sarah thinks you were trying to scare us as some kind of dominance display. Marcus thinks maybe your culture views intimidation as a greeting ritual. I think there might have been a miscommunication about territory rights." "Which is it?" Zixthal felt trapped. The human had just listed 3 possible explanations, one of which was exactly correct, and was calmly waiting for an answer as if they were discussing the weather. He decided honesty was the best approach. "Humans seem to value directness. Dr. Chen's assessment is correct," Zixthal said. "The Krathix Dominion uses psychological warfare as our primary conquest strategy. We create fear in our enemies, causing them to surrender without significant combat. We believed you would react as other species have reacted." "Oh," Sarah said, looking genuinely surprised. "You were trying to conquer us." "That was the initial objective, yes." "Huh," Marcus said. "I did not see that coming. So all the scary displays and the holographic planet destruction and the scary sounds were supposed to make us surrender?" "Yes," Zixthal confirmed. There was a long moment of silence. Then all 3 humans started laughing. They were not laughing at the Krathix with mockery or anger. They were laughing with genuine amusement, as if they had just been told a funny joke. "Oh man," Rodriguez said, wiping his eyes. "No wonder you guys have seemed so confused. Commander, I'm sorry, but humans don't really work that way. We're persistence predators. We evolved to deal with fear and keep going anyway. You can't scare us into surrendering because our entire evolutionary history is about not giving up when things get scary. We have come to understand this," Zixthal said with as much dignity as he could manage, "which is why we wish to propose an alternative arrangement. The Krathix Dominion would like to offer humanity a formal alliance." Rodriguez's expression became more serious. "An alliance? What would that involve? Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchange, shared scientific research," Zixthal listed. "The Krathix Dominion controls 47 star systems. We have resources, technology, and established trade routes. An alliance with humanity would be mutually beneficial." "Why would you want to ally with us?" Sarah asked. "You just tried to conquer us." "Because," Vexith said, speaking up for the first time, "any species that can remain calm and curious in the face of our most advanced intimidation techniques is a species we want as an